Hello everybody, Beth here from Access Paranormal. For this week's I Want to Know, which is ghost hunting apps and do they work? So I am going to first admit to say that I've actually used one about 6 years ago originally, and I used it a couple of times. It was the Ghost Radar. But I actually want to ask you guys, so if you're watching the replay or you're watching this live, let me know, have you actually used one and what did you think of it? Were your results very interesting? Have you used it in different locations? Did you get different readings or anything like that? Please let me know. Be really interested to find out. So the question being, do ghost apps work? So I have to honestly tell you, yes and no. Now, I bet you weren't thinking of that kind of answer from somebody like me, but I will explain. Firstly, we'll have a look at the kinds of features that ghost apps, these types of ghost hunting apps, actually claim to have. Now, obviously, they are meant to detect EMF. That's one thing. There's also, hi Corrine, how are you, sweetie? They're meant to detect EMF. There's also ones that say that they measure EVP. Now, as investigators, we know you can't actually measure EVP. EVP is electronic voice phenomena, which means that it's something that has been captured audibly that hasn't been heard at the time. If it was heard at the time, it's called audible phenomena. So for something to be measured that you can't hear at the time is pretty not happening. So but I think that's just the terminology of some of these ghost apps, people that have engineered them. Obviously it's not the same lingo that we use as well. So measures EVP, which obviously just means it records audio. There's also ones that they say they do sound manipulation, which is generally another fancy word for the ovilus. So again, it's the thought of people having a device that has words built in it, and obviously there's EMF fluctuations, and apparently that is the device and the energy is meant to manipulate and spit out words. So these ghost apps are meant to actually do and detect this as well. And I think I saw another one as well that said they also had a temperature gauge too. So since 6 years ago, using my very first one, which was the Ghost Radar, I was actually quite surprised a couple of weeks ago when I started researching this from the question that came through, because I didn't realize how much more sophisticated it had become. Like, there are some apps that have 5 or 6 different features on them instead of just detecting ghosts, or just detecting EMF, or just temperature, or just something else. So it's been an interesting couple of weeks. I've been using different apps at home. I've been using different apps at work, and just kind of pushing it off to the side, going, don't worry, it's fine. I'm just my phone. There's all these lights beeping and sort of radars going off. So I was trying on all different areas and seeing if it worked. Now, two things that I could try and verify while using these apps recently was temperature and EMF. So the temperature, where I work, I'm actually quite lucky. We've actually got temperature sensors for what I do. But so I was able to check the temperature gauges there and the temperature readings in some of these apps against what it was, and also with EMF as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that later too. So these apps claim to have these types of features. Now, smartphones are pretty technical. They're pretty advanced also as well. Now, I never really thought about the types of features that are in an iPhone or an Android that could actually help with investigating. So think about it with, say for instance, there are FM tuners in an iPhone and of course an Android. Although it's digital, it's not analog. There's a whole thing about that as well. The fact that, many phone makers like you to use digital networks because you use data. And if you use data, you use money, ching ching. So keep that in mind. There are iPhones and smartphones do have the capability of actually having FM tuner chip in them, but you have to have them activated apparently. So, but that's a whole different argument there altogether. But so there's that capacity as well. There's also ones where you've got GPS, so it can actually detect where you are. There's obviously in order for you to receive texts and emails, there's EMF, obviously detecting EMF and definitely radio frequency as well. So there's a detection function there in these phones. There's also ones that a barometer, you can actually detect a temperature change in pressure and barometers, and those apps are really good for people who are out fishing. I know, it's crazy, huh? But reason being is that if there's a decent change in the barometer pressure, they will actually know if a storm is coming, and if a storm is coming, they know to pack up and go, and they could be out in gosh knows where, like miles out to sea, so it gives them substantial time to be able to come back to land and be safe. So all phones have all these different types of things. Some of them do say, like I mentioned before, temperature. Some of these apps do say that they actually have temperature settings or temperature detection. Again, if it's smartphones don't have the capacity stock standard to detect ambient temperature. They do, however, have a temperature gauge inside them. So 2 weeks ago, my husband put his phone down. We're outside, picked it up, and it's an Apple iPhone, and it said, yep, I'm not working anymore, haha. Basically, it's too hot, no way. And that's because the temperature gauge inside it, excuse me, and was obviously working. So as far as ambient temperature, they don't have it. So, but I still managed to download a free app that was a temperature gauge, and had a bit of an entertaining time in that as well, because the first time I turned it on, it said that the temperature was 37 degrees Celsius. It certainly wasn't 37 degrees Celsius. For our Fahrenheit friends, that's probably about 106 degrees. If that was the case, I would not be leisurely looking at my phone going, oh, look at the temperature. I'd be getting the hell out of there because that's way too warm. So yeah, I now understanding the internal technology of a phone, ambient temperature is not going to be reflected correctly in those apps as well. But there are little devices you can actually buy and plug in to the actual, I think it might even be a certain socket that you've got depending on the make of your phone. You can actually plug that in and it actually can detect temperature. So that's the best way if you want to use your phone for that. But the apps out there, it's at this point in time, in this millennia, this day, there is no ambient temperature that can be detected by a smartphone. So all these different types of things, and as I said, I had fun testing them out, and I looked really quite strange on the train having these gadgets and stuff, and all spitting out words and all the likes. So with the EMF detector, or the EMF detecting section of one of them, I carried it over towards my laptop, knowing that it would have a little bit of EMF if it did have something. I held it over there and it said it was 0.5 milligauss. Okay, cool. I then put my Mel meter next to it, and Mel didn't register anything. I thought, okay, maybe it's super sensitive. So I moved it away and I waited, and then I moved it back there again and it was 0. So it hadn't changed. I thought, okay, so then I moved my Mel meter back. That was still 0. So although they do have a capacity to pick up something, they do obviously receive RF. When it comes to detecting it, it's not very accurate in my testing that I was able to do. So that was one thing as well. So as again with the temperature was quite interesting, really interesting, and quite funny. So if you are going to use these apps, because I'm not going to sit there and say don't use them, they're full of crap, blah blah blah. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm just here providing information and just giving a bit of a different view on this. Personally, myself, I think they're great fun if you're in a group setting and you're at a picnic, or you're out with friends, or you're having lunch, or whatever it is. You could be having a few drinks at a friend's place. Haha. Look how funny, and especially the ones that pick out the words, they can be hilarious. It's very, very funny. Good conversation starter, I must admit. You can have some really great drinking games if you want to go down that path. But if you want to do it from a social setting and entertainment purposes, I would totally use it just for that. As I get, the phones do have the capacity to run these types of functions, but they are not to the level that an investigator needs. For me, I'm a little old-fashioned. I prefer to use a device that actually does just that. Like, say, for instance, this device, it's got the antenna as well, so it's got REM as well, it's got tension detection as well as an EMF. So I prefer to use devices that are actually physically made for what they're made for. I won't be dialing home anytime soon in one of these, so I prefer to just use exactly devices that are there for that purpose, because they're better quality. You're going to get a better reading. So if you do use them for entertainment purposes, and you'll find when you do look at purchasing these apps, the majority of them, in fact all of them that I've seen so far, say for entertainment purposes only. And there isn't just the fact that ghosts and spirits have not been proven. There's also the fact that some of them say, look, we can't guarantee you're going to pick something up, blah, blah, blah. And we understand that. We get that when we go to venues and we're there to investigate publicly. But again, I found the quality was nowhere near compared to some of the stuff that I've used over the years. So for me, it's a heap of fun. Try it out, see what you get. But it's not something I would rely on, especially not for private and residential cases. Definitely not. If you're out and it's your first time and you're a bit interested in this kind of stuff, and you're out on a tour and they've got a couple of gadgets or whatever and you just kind of want to use it, by all means, maybe that's fine. Try that too. If you are really someone who wants to give it a go, take notes, do research, suss it out, have a repeatable different ways you can actually look at measuring what it outputs or anything like that, and see if there's a pattern, see if there's difference in quality. But I had great fun trying to do it. I must admit, I looked very interesting in all different public places, especially with work. So if that's something you want to do that as well. One of my biggest fears is that there are people who may feel like there's something happening in their home, and they might actually go to look for these apps as a way to see if they can verify if anything in their home is paranormal. That's where I start to feel a bit, I don't know if that's a great decision. Again, I can't tell people what they can and can't do, but I wouldn't advise it if that's the case, because these apps are for entertainment purposes only. And I know there will be many skeptical people saying, well, you might as well be for entertainment purposes only because spirits and ghosts don't exist. But with a device that's as less detailed at picking up that information, I wouldn't be using it at all. Now, if you're into trying to debunk things, if you're looking at finding possible explanations for certain aspects of investigating, I'm giving a webinar, free webinar, that's happening on Friday and Saturday for our Aussie and New Zealand friends, and Thursday and Friday for our UK and US friends. It's about the 6 steps of finding your possible alternative explanation. So it's finding your debunking. It's a way to actually pull apart these different things that can happen when you're out on the field or you're out with a group and you're investigating a public location, and how to narrow it down and then actually think, that could actually be a cause of it. So these are this is the information I use. This is the tricks that I've used and found over the years, the tips I've used over the years. So it's a free webinar. It's got a form as well. So we'll be going through the form too. So we'll go through each step by step and going through an actual case that I actually came across, and it was one of the toughest ones I had, so I thought this would be a great example. Might as well use it. So by all means, if you are interested in registering for that, there are 2 different options for you, which can be 1 or 2 days, which will be covering part of a weekend. I will post the link to register for that at the below of this video. If you are watching this as a replay, fingers crossed that actual link will be up there as well, and also on my website as well, in accessparanormal.com/learning. Also, what I will do is actually post a couple of links on some videos that other people have done where they've actually tried to test out these apps as well. So if there's a couple of ones that I think Paranormal State had one, so a guy did a video on that. Another person also tried something else as well. So I thought they were really interesting because they showed the actual meter readings, they show what they did and how they compared it and stuff like that. So that can be kind of interesting to see how other people have done it as well. I would have done it today, but the device that I would have done that through, I'm actually looking at you with, so it makes it a little bit difficult when you're trying to use a ghost app as well as do a Facebook Live. So I hope you enjoyed that. By all means, try different things, do different things, give it a shot, but in my opinion, it's just a bit of fun. So I'm looking forward to reading the comments later on today, but thank you so much, and until next week.